Welcome, everyone. We're just giving participants about another 30 seconds to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. Well, hello again for those that I've already welcomed, and thanks so much for participating in today's timely and critical conversation. It's really great to see familiar names as well as new names amongst our participants. My name is Kyra Newmoff Shields, and I'm the Bright Cities Program Director at the nationwide nonprofit Healthy Babies, Bright Futures. Our goal is to reduce exposures to neurotoxic chemicals that cause developmental delays, especially for those babies that are especially for those babies that are disproportionately impacted by structural injustice and racial inequalities. The Bright Cities program is co-sponsoring today's webinar with the Ecology Center and Safer States. The Ecology Center is located in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and seeks to find innovative solutions for healthy people and a healthy planet. Safer States unites state-level advocacy groups to pass common sense policies to keep harmful chemicals out of our air, water, and food. And our Bright Cities program provides technical recommendations and funding to help cities strategically and pragmatically implement strategies to reduce neurotoxic exposures like environmentally preferable purchasing. Right now, we're working with over 20 US mayors and city leaders on tailored initiatives that measurably protect babies' brain development. Before I introduce our esteemed speakers, I wanted to share a couple of webinar logistics. First of all, our goal for the end of this hour is for each of you on the call to have one step in mind to support environmentally preferable purchasing. So some of you may know what information you need now to achieve that goal and go ahead and type that into the chat. For others of you, our speakers will share practical strategies to support environmentally preferable purchasing during this pandemic. At any time during their presentation, please feel free to type questions into the chat box. And after the speakers have shared their presentations, I'll read those questions. Finally, the webinar is being recorded today and will be shared with participants as well as our panelist slides and additional resource materials for any of you that are interested. And now, without further ado, I'm so grateful that we have 4 national thought leaders and practitioners, Dr. Farrah Fatemi, Mr. Matt Naud, Ms. Kshirajaa Ramesh, and Dr. Meuninck here to kick off a discussion to help us implement a policy on a shoestring and protect employees' health with green and cleaner, safer, with safer green cleaning and disinfecting products. So today, our first speaker is Dr. Farrah Fatemi. She'll share information about how to choose greener cleaning and disinfecting products. Dr. Fatemi directs the Healthy Homes program at Oregon Metro, a regional agency serving over 1.5 million people in the Portland metropolitan area. Dr. Fatemi leads community projects that reduce toxic chemical exposures in the home, especially those found in cleaning products and personal care products. So welcome, Dr. Fatemi. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thanks, Kyra. Give me a moment just to share my screen here. Okay. All right, does that look good? All right, so today I'm just going to give you kind of a primer and overview of why it's so important to be thinking about and moving towards greener cleaning and disinfecting products in our institutions. So especially in the time of COVID, we're all concerned about public health, but it actually turns out that some really harsh cleaners and disinfectants can also suppress our immune system. So we want to be really careful about what we're choosing for the health of everybody that is working in our buildings, so that what we're choosing is not harming our health and really helping to boost our immune systems in a time that's so critical. So what are some issues with the common conventional disinfectants? Well, one issue is that they can pose health risks by emitting air pollutants and leaving behind toxic residues. So some of the common air pollutants are a wide range of aerosols, including volatile organic compounds, as well as residues from things like bleach and quaternary ammonium compounds. Some of these chemicals, especially the ones that I just mentioned, can contribute to asthma, as well as things like skin irritation if they end up in the dust residues. So it's really important that we're choosing safer products for the people that are not only applying the products, but are in the buildings. So one example of a conventional disinfectant is bleach. And the issue here is that when we use bleach, even if it's diluted properly, that can emit chemicals such as carbon tetrachloride, chloroform, and several other halogenated volatile organic compounds. And research suggests that those chemicals can trigger as well as aggravate asthma. And asthma is one of the most common chronic illnesses in the US. So we want to be really supportive and cognizant of people that have asthma that are working in our buildings. Another common disinfectant, conventional disinfectant that has been used are disinfectants with quaternary ammonium compounds. One of the most common ones that we use at home is something like Windex. Those compounds have been also linked to asthma and skin irritation, like I just mentioned, but they can also accumulate in dust where they can persist in buildings. So, so that's another one to kind of look to greener alternatives. So how can we find healthier and safer, cleaner disinfectants? Well, one of the easy ways is to look for some certifications that signify a product is safer. And if you're not actually looking in the store, you can usually find this on the description online. Two of the most common that you'll see are the Safer Choice and Green Seal. And those are two great programs that certify better ingredients for these products. Safer Choice has also, is kind of a rigorous process where a manufacturer submits to have that certification, and there are only certain ingredients that can be acceptable for the Safer Choice program. There are a few other ones as well. So oftentimes these certifications will help you find a product that is safer. But in the time of COVID, we also want to make sure that what we're using, particularly disinfectants, are effective against COVID-19, right? And so one thing you can do is go online and find the EPA's List N. So this will show you products that are effective against coronavirus. And what you can do is go into their search function and type in some of the ingredients that you know are safer to find products that are a little bit better. Now, what ingredients should you be looking for? So some of the good ones to type into that search engine are things like different types of alcohol, ethanol or isopropanol. Hydrogen peroxide is a really common and widely found alternative to things like bleach and ammonium, as well as L-lactic acid and citric acid. The reasons that these are good alternatives is that Alcohol is basically evaporating off of surfaces that you're putting it on and doesn't leave behind a toxic residue. Hydrogen peroxide is basically breaking down into water and oxygen. And L-lactic acid and citric acid are they're compounds that are found in naturally, and they break down, they're biodegradable. So what we use, I'll give you just a couple examples of what we use at Oregon Metro in our facilities. Hilliard Suprox 39, as well as Clorox hydrogen peroxide. So that 39 is Green Seal certified, and the hydrogen peroxide wipes by Clorox, again, they have one of those ingredients that are a good bleach alternative or alternative to bleach. There are a couple other resources that I'll point you to that have lists of ingredients or will help you find products that are safer. So Because Health has put together a nice list, and you can see some of the products that they recommend there. That's a great resource. The Environmental Working Group also has a guide to cleaners that will rate different cleaners. And then the City of San Francisco has a great website that has disinfectants that they recommend, and those are generally safer options as well. So I do want to point out that, you know, there are sometimes considerations that, you know, we need to take into account about cost, right? And so a really nice study was done a few years back looking at different businesses and whether they were using green products and if those products were actually costing a whole lot more or not. And overwhelmingly what they saw with over 300 participants in that survey is that the cost is not typically more than conventional products. So in very rare cases, you may be paying just a little bit more, but oftentimes more the case is really those are costing about the same. So there are lots of health and environmental benefits that we can't quantify. So really the benefits are so much more than is shown just by cost. I do want to encourage you once you identify some products that you may want to switch to, developing a procurement plan and a way to phase out your old products is a really great thing to do. There are some great examples that I'm including here of procurement plans that have switched over to green products that you may find useful here. And I will also just offer myself up as a resource in your search for cleaner or greener, excuse me, greener cleaning or disinfecting products, and looking for ways to really integrate those into your procurement and implementation. I think that's all I have for today.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Fatemi. That was very interesting. If anybody has a question, please go ahead and type that into the chat so we can do that at the end. So sort of definitely building off of your presentation, our second speaker is Mr. Matt Naud, and he'll discuss additional cost savings related to greener procurement and steps to get started. Mr. Naud was the environmental coordinator in Ann Arbor, Michigan for 17 years and also has substantial experience building sustainability into the culture of organizations. He has had formative leadership roles in the Urban Sustainability Directors Network and other regional networks of city sustainability staff. So thanks a lot, Mr. Naud, for being with us, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Great, everybody can see that? Thanks so much for having me, Kshirajaa, and pleasure to be with the rest of the panelists, learning a lot. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the time in Ann Arbor. And I think one of the best examples I saw in terms of total cost savings and ways to look at purchasing in an integrated approach was the work that our energy folks did around LEDs with red, yellow, green and streetlights. And Ann Arbor was early doing pilots back in 2005 and swapping them out on one city block and letting folks let us know what they thought about the color and the look. And, you know, as you might imagine, LEDs use a lot less energy. But it turns out that really the cost savings for the city when it took 2 union staff and depreciation on a lift truck to change those fixtures, you know, every couple of years when they blew out. And there's also safety issues when they blow out. And putting in LEDs, longer life. You know, these fixtures are up to 20 now. So energy savings was part of this, but it really was labor and maintenance. Also, a lot of these are mercury bulbs, and so it was removing that toxin from the environment. And the hope was that our workman's comp costs would go down, that there's just less risk in insurance over time. So, you know, Ann Arbor is a pretty progressive, sustainable town, but we didn't have an integrated approach to green purchasing. We'd had lots of turnover in our procurement group. Purchasing is very disaggregated. Over 130 different folks have access to P cards. We had a number of council resolutions that have been passed supporting purchasing green products, but they weren't all integrated in one place. And so we had things like resolutions on integrated pest management. We banned tar sealants. I remember we had done a ton of work with some of our sustainability folks working on language for cleaning contracts. And lo and behold, with all the turnover 6 years later, none of that language was still in the new contracts. So, you know, struggling with how to keep that in place. We, with the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, participated in their effort to develop this green purchasing playbook with RPN. And I say this, we were kind of lurkers rather than leaders. We were just following along, not really ready with the bandwidth. But a year or so later, our purchasing person who was there and stable person ended up drafting a policy on his own using that playbook. And then we worked with the Ecology Center, who we're fortunate to have a strong relationship with, and they're right here in town with Rebecca. They took a look at it and made some suggestions about the way we could be kind of lean forward on toxins. And I think that really has pushed our policy forward, and it's now becoming more of a model policy. And it's initiated some early discussions with Staples, who was a provider for the city, where we've started talking with them about, hey, as your customer, when my employees go to your website, can we only show them products that are compliant with the City of Ann Arbor's policy? And I'll touch on some of the scale issues in a minute. So just some recommendations, you know, as you're looking to do this in an organization, whether it's a city or the private sector, look for those champions inside the organization. We had a internal group, an environmental management team, was a way to get insight into how the different departments might react to new policies. Many cities have environmental or sustainability commissions. I know Anchorage, they're working through a health commission. Your finance staff can be great to find out what you're buying as an organization and look for tracking and reporting opportunities. And the finance folks like to count things, so they can be super helpful about how to report. You can also work with your procurement group to look at your contract calendar. When are the key contracts coming up for bid, so you're ready to put some of that green policy language into them when you move forward. So with that, I'll sum it up. I think the opportunities are, to the extent cities and municipalities can work with policies, we've got a bigger collective voice when we go to Staples and Office Depot and those big suppliers to say, We want a screen that only shows compliant products to our purchasers. And then one of the things we've been working on with Rebecca is most city sustainability shops don't have very many people. And so it's hard to figure out a way to build this into the organization. And can we create one common training platform that all cities with these policies can use in a much more efficient way? So with that, again, I'm happy to be a resource. And if anyone has questions, you can reach me here or through Rebecca at the Ecology Center.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Naud. It is wonderful to have you and Dr. Fatemi offer yourselves as resources. And so I encourage everybody to follow up on those, as well as follow up with any of our speakers. We're so happy to have our third speaker today. Her name is Miss Kshirajaa Ramesh, and she'll share her rich experience in Maryland and walk us through calculators to help us quantify the cost savings and environmental benefits associated with greener procurement. Ms. Ramesh is a sustainability coordinator with the Maryland Department of General Services and is the key staff person for the state's Green Purchasing Committee. So Ms. Ramesh, thank you so much for being here, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Kyra. Just give me 1 second as I pull everything up. All right, so Kyra did a really great job. Thank you for introducing me. So I'll skip a little bit of who I am and what I do, but what I intend for this presentation is to show you guys how you can justify sustainability and your green purchasing programs through cost savings. So real quick, the Green Purchasing Committee for Maryland was established by law, and that law basically created an interagency Green Purchasing Committee. Now this committee basically touches on everything related to green purchasing, environmentally preferable purchasing for the state of Maryland. Every year, we also create this annual report that's sent off to the legislature. And this report, I really recommend you guys taking a look at it because a lot of the stuff I do talk about in this presentation is derived from this report. So it's been touched on by the other speakers, but one of the best ways to communicate the benefits and the value of green purchasing is to show that there are quantifiable benefits. Yes, big picture, buying green is good for the environment. We know it's healthy for people, but what does that really mean? And then there's this misconception that buying green is always expensive. And especially now, even the idea of spending extra money can put people off. So it's really vital to communicate that that's not always true. Buying green can and it will result in cost savings. So by showing real numbers, saying that we've avoided this much pollution, that we've avoided this many hazardous substances, and also on top of all that, we can also prove that there's been cost savings associated with the green purchasing program, well, then who can really argue with that? So that's what the state of Maryland did for this time for the first time, is that we found real benefits for different product categories within our green purchasing program. So we did for electronic and IT products, for lighting, copy paper, solar and wind energy. And for two of those product categories, the first two for electronic and IT and lighting, we were able to show that there are cost savings associated with those. So the first one is electronic and IT products. And I'm just gonna walk you guys through how I did these calculations. The state of Maryland is required to buy EP silver and gold products. And EP is basically an eco-label that's managed by the Green Electronics Council. They use less material in their products. They have less hazardous substances. And their life cycle is also longer. So there's a number of benefits associated with buying EP products. And the Green Electronics Council has put out calculators so you guys can calculate those benefits. One is hosted by the council themselves and the other one sits on EPA's website. And linked on the top right here are the benefits. And using those, I was able to calculate the data values that are shown on the left. So once you put your information into these calculators, it'll also spit out a greenhouse gas emission reduction value, saying this is how many carbon emissions or CO2 equivalent emissions were avoided. And that you can put into the EPA calculator to give you equivalent values. And again, we did save a bunch of money with our EP products, about $760,000 this year alone. The next one is lighting products and the benefits of buying LEDs. So I'm going to show you guys how to do those calculations, but that's in the next couple slides. Again, you can use the kilowatt hour savings that you do calculate from those calculators and put them back right into the EPA calculator, and it'll give you data points that you can use to make those apples to apples comparisons across your product category. So just really keeping things consistent and making those numbers really usable. And over here on the left is, again, the cost savings that we did have for the verified LED purchases. And this is a little more technical, but I promise this table looks intimidating. It's not. So this table is basically what we use to calculate lighting benefits. It's a summary of what we had in our Excel workbook. So again, you can copy paste this right into an Excel sheet and just follow along from there. And I'm going to quickly walk you through everything. So we have, what is your lighting product? How many units did you purchase? The wattage of that LED product, and then the wattage of the product that that LED replaces. So you then calculate the difference in watts. So in this case, it would be cell D minus cell C. And then watts saved for all units. And how do you calculate that? You take how many units you purchase, so cell B, and you multiply that by cell E, the difference in watts. Then you also need to know or estimate how many hours the lights are on at your sites. So we gave 2080, so 2080 hours per year. And that's basically just like 40 hours a week for the business year. Using that, if you multiply cell, like the watts saved for all units, cell F, multiplied by G, the number of hours the lights are on, divided by 1,000, you can get the number of kilowatt hours of electricity saved with that purchase for that LED one, that lighting product. And so that is the number that you will plug into the greenhouse gas equivalencies calculator that's hosted by EPA. You'll also need the electricity cost. So how much are you spending per kilowatt hour? And if you take that and you take the electricity cost by the number of kilowatt hours saved, you can get an annual electricity cost savings. So that is how you get the energy cost savings. So Matt mentioned that they also had benefits from operations and maintenance. So this is ignoring all of that. This is purely energy cost savings associated with buying energy efficient products. There are other calculators. So if that table is like just not for you, you want to do something different, Energy Star has different ways you can calculate. They have an Energy Star qualified lighting calculator. So you guys can take a look at that. Let me see if I can just pull it up real quick. So it looks like this. It's very simple, very basic. It's useful if you have a one-off thing you want to calculate, but if you want to calculate for like many products, I wouldn't recommend this just because you'd have to copy and paste the results of every single line item that you have. So that's the issue with that. I don't know what happened. Oh, here we are, sorry. The other one is the Energy Star qualified lighting calculator, and this is an Excel sheet. And this one isn't linked on the Energy Star webpage, but if you Google lighting calculator Energy Star on, you just put it in your search bar, it'll pull up an Excel sheet, Excel file that you can download. It looks like the image here on the right. It's fantastic. I do recommend it because it is a great resource, even if you're not using the sheet, because it gives you wattages for incandescent bulbs or CFLs, just so you can have that information and plug it into, let's say you use a different calculation like we did. And then just for fun, if you guys want to use other calculators, I've also included what we use to calculate the benefits of our buying recycled copy paper, and we use the Environmental Paper Network. It is a really useful, great tool. They have beautiful graphics and a way to represent their data points and the benefits of buying recycled copy or recycled paper, period, that I do encourage you guys to take advantage of if you are buying this product. So for this, you can see that we saved 19 pounds of hazardous air pollutants. 6,937 pounds of solid waste was diverted from landfills. We saved nearly 169,000 gallons of water. Like, there are just so many benefits. This is what I've chosen to represent for Maryland, but there are other things, other ways you can represent the benefits that you get from buying your recycled paper products. And EPA also has their own recycled content tool, just in case you want another calculator. There's a ton out there. I do recommend exploring and seeing what will work for you and for your team. And just to wrap things up, everything that the Green Purchasing Committee does, it's hosted on our website and it's fully accessible. I recommend you guys check it out, especially for smaller organizations. If you guys don't have a devoted team, try looking at what other states, what other organizations are doing. Adopt, adapt, integrate, and just, cut out that extra work. Make things as easy and simple for you guys as possible. So that is it for me. This is my contact information. In case you need anything, feel free to reach out, and Kshirajaa will host the question and answers at the end. So I look forward to it. Let me stop sharing.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Ramesh. I don't know about you all, but I love all those calculators. And I would be really curious amongst our participants who has used calculators and, to the degrees of different success. So please share those comments in the chat if you have a chance. Our final speaker today is Dr. Becca Meuninck. She'll share practical resources that city staff can use to establish environmentally preferable purchasing practices in their own communities, as well as training opportunities. Dr. Meuninck leads the Safer States Work Group on non-toxic procurement with advocates from across the United States. She's helped to create several tools, including a roadmap and an online training module related to non-toxic procurement, and provide support and technical assistance to cities that want to implement non-toxic, environmentally preferable purchasing policies. So, of course, Dr. Meuninck, we're so happy to have you here and looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. This has been great. It's been wonderful to hear everyone else's presentation. And I want to build off that. I have two sort of tidbits on the cost savings, and then to go into what really is another way of savings is thinking about, as Kshirajaa just said, what's already out there? What are the resources that are available to you that you can create and then implement your EPP policies on the cheap, so not having to spend a lot of money. So that will be the focus of the tools that are available out there. The one piece, two pieces I want to focus on non-toxic procurement. And this is something that's happening in a number of states that have already banned the use of PFAS-containing firefighting foam. Well, PFAS are per and polyfluorinated alkyl substances, and they're toxic. They're called the forever chemical. They don't break down in the environment. They're linked to a number of different health impacts, and I could go on all day about these chemicals, but I won't have time to. They're a huge source of drinking water contamination in my state of Michigan, and frankly, all over the country. So this is something that we're concerned about, both on the cost side and on the human health side. On the cost side, if you're contaminating communities' drinking water, either groundwater or surface water contamination, you have to take these chemicals out, usually with very expensive filtration systems, which is often a cost on ratepayers in the city. And some cities and communities will have to put the bill for that if there isn't a polluter pay sort of initiative in your state. There are, the good news is, some safer alternatives, several that have received a green screen certification, and the slides here with the links are available in a Google folder. We'll send to you all the participants later on. So you'll be able to look up what those foams are and to be able to have a conversation with your fire chief. The anecdote I want to provide is here in Ann Arbor, and Matt alluded to this in his presentation, our fire chief switched from the PFAS-containing firefighting foams to the fluorine-free foams. Those were about the similar cost of actually buying the foams. The problem is when they had all of this backstock of PFAS-containing firefighting foams, they did have to dispose of it as hazardous waste, which did have a cost to it. So if you're thinking forward thinking, not purchasing the toxic products in the first place means that you don't have the cost associated with actually paying for hazardous waste disposal fees. So we've heard in a couple of the presentations that thinking about the life cycle costs of any particular product we're purchasing. So going forward, if you're working with your fire chiefs in your communities to move from the PFAS-containing firefighting foam to the non-hazardous fluorine-free foam, particularly the certified kinds, you're going to have a cost savings there. I don't have numbers specifically with this because it really is going to depend on the size of your city and how much foam and everything is purchased. But happy to talk to folks. My contact information is available. The other piece that I wanted to talk about is for cost neutral and sometimes cost savings is for furniture. There's been a lot of research done within healthcare institutions on purchasing non-toxic furniture without some of the chemicals here on the slide, particularly flame retardants and PFAS again, are those to look at that have to be added to a piece of furniture. So there's not an additional cost if you do not have them in the furniture themselves. So I think about this as really low-hanging fruit. You'd be surprised on how much your state or your city is actually buying furniture from Staples or things like that, or perhaps off a contract. But you can actually find similar equivalent products that have this, the same functionality and everything, but don't have these toxic chemicals. And where can you find them? So one of the things that we have developed with Safer States are a number of different free resources for states, counties, cities to look at non-toxic procurement. And we have this roadmap that we've created that has a 4-step process. Each of the steps has a different audience in mind. If you are a sustainability professional, the foundation building piece is really for you because maybe you don't know much about procurement and how that works and what are group purchasing organizations and things along those lines. So the links again will send out specifically, but the first step is really creating that foundation. So learning about what are cooperative purchasing organizations, what are the things that you need to know. If you're a procurement professional, you may already know these things, and this may not be something that you need to actually dive into. But again, for our sustainability friends, for environmental advocates, for any community members and leaders that you might be working with, this is a good place to start to learn a little bit about procurement. Creating environmentally preferable purchasing policy is, like Matt said, incredibly important. So not necessarily having this policy here and that policy there where they're disjointed and not connected, and maybe there's turnover between different staff over the years, and you lose, like Matt said, you lose your green cleaning specifications. If you have a consolidated or a comprehensive environmentally preferable purchasing or sustainable purchasing policy, you have this policy in one place. But creating it can be a little bit intimidating. When Matt mentioned working with the road or the playbook that's created by USDN and Responsible Purchasing Network, that's a terrific place to start. But at this point, there are excellent city level and state level models. In this, they can also be used for counties and things like that, to actually take the information, to take the policies that have been implemented, that have been passed in other places, and to build on those. We also have a toolkit at the Ecology Center that I can send to anyone who's interested that has updated model policies with our best thinking, model groups of specifications that you might start off with, some of which would have cost savings impacts. So going back to our conversation about furniture, there are terrific guides in this roadmap, for example, from different organizations where you can actually see the purchasing guides and the products for furniture, where you can see the cost of them, see the name of the product and things like that. So those resources, I encourage folks to take a look at this roadmap. And that is actually, I should have forwarded to the slide. Those are on the implementing side of the roadmap. I'm not going to go through all the materials in the interest of time, but you can see guides and specifications that you can pull off of. Here are some of the resources available and some of the product categories that are on the roadmap. And we are continuing to edit this and add new ones. I have a bunch that I'm going to add just even from this webinar, particularly in the measuring and tools and reporting outside of things, which is the last step. So some of the ones that Kshirajaa actually mentioned, I think are really terrific, and some of them already are on this program, but we'll be adding more. As Matt alluded to, there is a new online training module available for free that Ecology Center and Safer States created. The audience is really anyone who can purchase something in a city, in a county, in a state, or even institutions, and needs to know a little bit about environmentally preferable purchasing and how they actually can do that. In many places, particularly in cities, purchasing is very distributed. And so you have purchasing power, like Matt said, and 100, and I think it was 30 some people can actually buy something off of the Staples site. And so how do you actually train those folks when you don't have a lot of either sustainability staff or procurement staff to do trainings? Webinars, they can be iffy. But we created this program so you can take the training and then you can actually get a certificate from us saying that you've taken it. So you can encourage your staff to do something like this. Eventually, we hope to be able to make this a little bit more modular so different cities could work with us to create their own personalized program. But right now, this training is free and it's available online and the link is there. This is what it looks like, just a quick screenshot of it. As you can see, these are different on the side of things here. These are different parts of the module that you'll learn about different aspects. So maybe you don't need to do them all. There are quizzes, so you know you're retaining the information there and so on. So there's a lot of ways that we can help the various organizations here that are participating in the webinar and Ecology Center and Safer States in particular. I can help you and provide you with technical assistance and policy development for policy development implementation in a number of different areas. We have a lot of on-the-ground help, virtual now actually, in many different areas. We've been working, for example, with folks from the city of Anchorage, Alaska, who are interested in moving things forward and creating their own procurement policy. And so there are various resources there. I encourage you to send me an email to let me know if you'd like some help. And we can connect you either with our staff or with folks in your area, in your neck of the woods who can help out. Again, we have the link to the roadmap and our online training module link on implementing environmentally preferable purchasing. Because Safer States and Ecology Center have been focused also on really boosting up non-toxic procurement and Healthy Babies Bright Futures as well, we have a plan to implement or to create a metrics and goals document, if you will, or way of thinking about how do you actually measure non-toxic procurement? Because there's a lot of terrific resources out there that Kshirajaa showed you for energy and climate and energy efficiency and things along those lines, but there's not as much, and it's a little bit more difficult to quantify the non-toxic, other than maybe cost savings for certain products. What are the benefits, the sort of rounded out benefits there? So that is something that we hope to create in 2021. We encourage you all to connect with us so that we can keep you up to date as we create new resources. And again, put you in touch with other experts with your particular questions in mind.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Meuninck. The amount of resources shared throughout all these presentations is absolutely fantastic and astounding to some degree. So it's really given me a lot of new information too. Before we open it up to other questions from the participants, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to share a pearl from today's conversation, the one or two things that they would like participants to take away from the conversation. So let's start with you, Dr. Fatemi.
All right. Well, I would say if you can look for safer disinfectant options such as hydrogen peroxide and check what you're using against COVID-19 on the list N, you'll be in good shape.
Great, thanks. Could you respond to a question too that came up from a participant that maybe not all of the chemicals on list N are what we might consider safe?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, list N is just a very comprehensive list that shows what is effective against COVID-19. And that is such a great point that it's not necessarily highlighting safer options. So that's where the ingredients that I was highlighting, which are the alcohols, hydrogen peroxide, lactic acid, and citric acid, are better options. And some of the resources that we'll be sending out later will really help you kind of pick through that. But you can use the list N to search for those safer ingredients in the approved products against COVID-19. Great question.
Great, thanks for the pearl and the clarification. So going back to the pearls, Mr. Naud, what would you ask the participants to take away today?
Just that I think those of you in local government, municipalities, small shops, there are ways that you can do this. And as Becca was saying, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of canned models that are out there that can really, I think, move the ball forward in your community quickly without a lot of extra work on already overburdened staff.
Okay, yeah, great point. And there's so many resources here in this call to help you do that, to not replicate the wheel. Okay, Ms. Ramesh, what do you think? What's your pearl for everyone today?
I think that it's important to understand that green purchasing doesn't have to be a one-off, super idealistic program that's rarely achievable. It can provide true value to your team and your organization. And you just have to communicate that and make the case for it. And it's totally doable.
That's great. I'm so inspired right now. Thank you. And Dr. Meuninck, what about you? What's your pearl?
I guess it's in some ways building off of Matt's, and that you're not alone in doing this. I mean, we heard from all of our speakers that they're willing to, help and communicate with you all. We definitely can provide that technical assistance and connect you to other experts if you have questions that are sort of beyond our expertise. We're doing this quite often, and so if you're new to this, it's a good place to start with us, and then eventually there are other professionals that you may want to work with that aren't free to work with, but they can help you along the way.
Great. Thank you so much for that thoughtful commentary. Are there any questions that the panelists would like to ask of each other? I think we've addressed most of them from the participants, but feel free to chat those back.
I know, Matt, you got a question here that you answered from Shayna in Alaska, and I'm wondering if you wanted to address that. I don't know if everybody can see the typed out answers, but the question was, do you have suggestions on coordinating contracts and calendars or disaggregating purchasing situations?
Yeah, my thought on that was, we did have one person in charge of purchasing and all the contracts went through them. So we had that advantage that once we had that stable person, we could work with them. But if you're really disaggregated and you've got public works doing their own thing and, the water plant doing something else, capital planning was that space where every year everyone got together to figure out where the money was going to get spent and what kind of projects. And it just strikes me that place where people, as they're talking about these big capital projects, talk about upcoming contracts, and there might be a way to coordinate there.
Thanks. I did have one question. It came up, that Staples has a green screen and cities can purchase using that screen. I wonder how accessible is that for, cities that are in contract with Staples? Can they go ahead and use that green screen now? And or how would they access a screen like that with their suppliers?
My understanding, if you are working with Staples and some of the other companies, like I know Max Office Depot has a screen as well, you would need to talk to whoever your representative is there, sometimes they're local or state level, and ask them to implement that on usually there's a login and you purchase products off of a governmental account. And so you would need to ask them to put that green screen. There are wide differences. Staples green screen, for example, is okay, but there are problems with it. They're not very strong on toxic chemicals in products, for example, and so on and so forth. So there's work that needs to be done on some of these screens, but it's an easy first step to take. Again, with these big national office supply companies, we have been working with some of our partners on some of the smaller companies. WB Mason is regionally in the Northeast that we have talked to about this. And so we're going to continue going there to make sure that this is available on, wherever you're buying your products from. So that's sort of on the business side of things, is moving businesses in that direction. As Matt alluded to, the more states and cities that are pushing these companies, the more demand they're going to see and the more they will develop these products.
Great, thanks. Did anybody else want to jump in on that? Okay, we had another question for you, Becca, from Shayna. Is there pushback on not using flame retardants in furniture or on furniture?
Really not anymore. Most of the flame retardants that are used on commercial level furniture have been removed in many different products. So the cost comparison is really equal, and most city buildings and county and state buildings need to have sprinkler systems. And so it's a different level than the sort of residential furniture standard. And so they've been able to move out of flame retardants faster than in the residential side, which is really moving that way as well. With office furniture and such. And we're home right here in Michigan to some of the institutional furniture makers like Herman Miller and Hayworth and others. And they've been really leading, and they have incredible sustainability teams that are offering a lot of products without flame retardants, without PFAS, and so on and so forth. So I guess the pushback would be you have to do some of the education with your teams, if you have people who are not in sustainability, to understand why this is important and why you don't need these flame retardants anymore because you have the sprinkler system and so on and so forth.
Okay, I think I'll share one more question and then we can wrap it up if there's no other questions or comments from our panelists. For the panelists, in your experience, what have been the major challenges besides not having enough staff time or staff capacity to work on environmentally preferable purchasing that you've seen in your work that might inform others how to surmount those challenges as they meet the same ones?
I can go first. So one of our bigger challenges, is been getting good usable data from vendors and making sure that what they're claiming to be green is actually green and not just being greenwashed, and going through and just double checking. So we've been working on that. That's still a process improvement. And so just trying to figure out best ways to move forward on that. So don't have an answer yet, just figuring it out as we go.
Absolutely. That's important. So it sounds like you're working directly with the suppliers to understand what the products are in that particular thing that you want to purchase, so that you can be sure that it's.
And also the end run, when we've already purchased certain things, and then we've purchased on a big contract, and then reporting back to us what items are on those contracts are already green, especially contracts that have been there for a really long time that we haven't been able to get green purchasing language directly into them.
I think that's a good place. I think one of the things, one of the reasons why we did this webinar is, cost comes up as a reason that folks are intimidated to create a robust policy and to start implementing it. And then also knowing that you can take a bite of the apple. You don't have to do everything all at once. Even if you have a comprehensive policy, you can create a way to move through it in a strategic way. What are you going to prioritize each year and things like that? So there are different ways to approach this. Those are some of the fears that I hear when I talk to folks across the country about starting a new policy. Is it going to cost too much? And things like that. And in the training module, you're going to get that from folks who you were training about this. We do have a specific section on cost and things like that. So we'll probably be updating it after this webinar with additional information as well. But so you can talk to your staff about how you can actually do this. It doesn't necessarily cost more in all cases.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of this it just wasn't on my radar, as an employee at the city. I had no idea that coal tar sealants were as dangerous as it turns out they are. And I had no idea that a lot of food packaging has PFAS, perfluorinated compounds on it. So I think there's an awareness that those of you in the community can kind of raise with your elected officials, your commissions, your sustainability staff. And I think once you end it, that's where a lot of the cost issue should disappear, because we just shouldn't be serving kids at the hockey rink hot dogs with perfluorinated compounds on the packaging. So some of this we just need to get out of the business of buying in the first place.
Okay, well, thank you so much to our panelists. We really appreciate, the wisdom and experience you've shared. Thank you to the participants. And let's use this as a stepping stone to stay connected and work together to help foster more widespread environmentally preferable purchasing. So thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Great.
We're down.
Okay, well, thank you all so much. I think that went really well. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Kyra, for all your hard work on organizing it, hurting us cats, and mostly me, hurting me. So
it was really great. We had almost 40 participants, so that's, I think, a mark of success.
No kidding, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And more people who registered, I'm sure, who weren't able to attend, who can get the recording, and
absolutely,
that'll be good.
So, so could you send the recording to us too?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we'll probably try to even just put it in the Google folder if we can get like a, an MP3 file or something.